So today we're joined by Bill Adler, the CEO of Imagine Education Group, which also encompasses Imagine Childcare. Bill founded Imagine Education Australia in 2004, some 20 years ago. Imagine Education features four campuses across Brisbane and the Gold Coast, catering to services inclusive of hospitality to community services, automotive, and children's services. Imagine, in addition to catering to students' needs, offers accommodation services while facilitating employment opportunities via their job hub. As part of Imagine Group, Bill also operates Imagine Childcare, which will form the basis of today's discussion and interview. Imagine Childcare has fast become a brand that's synonymous with success across Australian childcare sector, or the Australian childcare sector, and it's now grown to 25 centres in operation. Bill, thanks for the time.
No worries. It's nice to meet you. Nice to see you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, and we'll get straight into a couple of questions that I think will flow quite naturally. Can you tell us a bit about your background personally in the creation initially of what was Imagine Education? Like, when did the business start? What triggered you starting that, and kind of how the company's evolved since then?
Yes. I was originally a school teacher, and I was a high school teacher, and I taught Japanese, and I went into administration pretty early. And as I approached my 40th birthday, I sort of thought, I had an idea. I did an MBA and thought I wanted to start my own business. And so back in 2003, I quit my job as a sort of, I guess, a deputy headmaster of a big private school. I was in charge of the high school area there, and opened up Imagine, and it was our first campus. I managed to get land over here in Southport in the Gold Coast, where I've been living for over 30 years. And 1990 I came to the Gold Coast, so I don't know whatever that is. So I started it was a bit of a dream at first. I had some land there, and we built the college, and then we built two childcare centers there, and they were the first centers. And at the time, the childcare was really, because I had been in education, like senior high school education. The college had been my main focus, and then the childcare was like a balancing business, because most of our students were international students, and it could be a little bit volatile.
Yep.
So we thought the childcare would be a balancing domestic business. Yeah.
And I didn't ask you this prior to the video, but now that you've said that, your history prior to moving to Queensland or to Australia, where are you from?
Yeah.
My background was
I've got this American accent, right?
Yeah.
And,
I was going to guess Canadian, actually, but
I've been here a long time.
Yeah.
I first came out here in 1983 as a backpacker.
Yep.
And then I came out permanently in 1985 to work for a year. And I taught in schools from the mid 80s up until 2003, mainly in Anglican schools. I'm still involved in Anglican schools.
Yep.
If you look me up on the internet, you'll see I'm the deputy chairman of a school around here that's a private K-12 school. And I'm still heavily involved in that side of my life. It's all volunteer stuff, but it's still, it's important to me. And then, I got married. I only was going to stay a year. I met my wife. We got married. Life happens.
Yep.
Now we got 4 kids, and they're all grown up and moved away, and we're up here in this big house by ourselves.
But, 4 kids, 4 campuses, 25 childcare centers.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And from the education piece, then what you had the 2 centers you mentioned, what later triggered the progression into kind of expanding Imagine Childcare as a larger brand across the country?
Well, I'd like to tell you that there was some great master plan, but it was really opportunities that presented themselves, and people within the industry who said, "Oh, hey, particularly after the financial crisis, there was a lack of building centers and towns." And you'll notice if you look at where our centers are, particularly in New South Wales, they're in regional towns, in Queensland too, and there had been a lack of investment in early childhood education in regional areas. And so we started doing that, and then opportunities kept coming, and we sort of just took it as it came, really. I mean, there was no grand plan to have 25 centers. We just, you know, we went forward with it, and the opportunities came, and when it looked right, we did another one, Yeah. So and like in Melbourne, our management team's in Melbourne, and Melbourne's a place where, we have a lot of talent and people who know what they're doing to run the centers too. So it's Victoria's a big part for us. Yeah.
And in terms of the business growth, based on what you've just run through, like, is there a focus now, once you did start realizing how quick the business was growing, like, did you put a focus around growth only in specific states like Vic and Queensland, where the majority of the centers are now, or did you only start to do that once you realized you were building scale in one state and then identified Victoria as a second state for growth?
Yes, that's essentially it. And it's limited by management capacity. I mean, as a school teacher, and one of my main business partners was an ex-primary school teacher. So you got two school teachers really. And so we're focused on educational outcomes. We have other people in the business who are focused on finance and all those other important things. But for us, we wanted to make sure that we could operate them correctly and do the right things for families. And we've been focused on educational outcomes, and we sort of tend to focus on programming outcomes and what families are looking for in terms of, the best outcomes for their children. Depending on the area too, you have to take a different approach, in a place like Doncaster, so it's pretty high socioeconomic.
Yep.
People are probably doing a lot to foster their own children's development. So you sort of have to extend that. Where in other areas where it's maybe the kids aren't as well prepared, they come to kindy and they need a lot more support for numeracy and literacy.
And in terms of the forecast moving forward, there's obviously a lot of scale in the business now.
Yeah.
How many centers? Well, I've just touched on the introduction, 25 centers now.
Yeah.
Are there further you expect to come in the pipeline? Do you believe there'll be a point where you don't want to go beyond the tipping point?
I think we're near that point now.
Yeah.
In terms of scale's fine, I think, but education is, well, it's not difficult to scale. The universities do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not rocket science, but it's for children and families. It's an unusual business in that, I mean, I don't know, anybody who's had young children, people feel like it's my kindy, and they don't look at it as, oh, this is someone's business. They look at it as this is our kindy. And I think you need to foster that, particularly around younger children, that they feel connected there, and that's part of their community, And so when you get to 50 or 100 centers, although I've never been there, so I don't know, but
yeah,
it might be, I see how it could be more difficult to manage and keep that family feeling happening. Yeah.
Yeah. So you'll assess that on a basis of as you.
Yeah. I look at everyone
yeah.
as it comes,
Yeah.
I like I said before, I don't have a grand plan to build 100 centers. If there's an opportunity and it looks good and it fits with what we're doing, I'll pursue it.
Okay. Now, in relation to the specific center we wanted to chat to you about today, in Doncaster, there's probably a couple of questions that people will have an interest in as to it's sure. One of the largest centers and most notable centers in the country. So, when you were kind of assessing the opportunity and looking at it, what attracted you to this center? Is it the quality and the scale of improvements? Is it the dual main road or the main road frontage that it's got an exposure? Is it the fee rates and the median income in that area, or there are other factors that kind of drove the decision?
I think Doncaster, like every center really, but especially Doncaster, is in a very good spot. Being on that main road, and in amongst other businesses along that road, we look for location. We look for easy access, ins and outs for parents. Like the fact that it was a big part of the cost of that building, and building's expensive, and it's a big fancy building, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And is the parking. But see, for parents, it's ease of access, right? You could get off the street. You're not struggling to get a pram out of the car while cars are whipping by on the street. That underground car parking is a big part of what makes that place attractive to operate a childcare center at. And Hume, who built it, they've done a great job. They built it to our specification, so we got what we wanted.
yep,
We weren't buying something someone else built and trying to make it fit to what we wanted, which is
yep,
probably the most attractive part about that for us, is that if we can get a developer to build what we want and in the right spot, we're pretty confident that we can make it successful.
yep. And like demographically, like what kind of analysis goes into any site selection? But like obviously this one for you, the fee rates in Doncaster are some of the highest in the state now. I think they're getting up to
They are
170 on average.
and they need to be, because the rent's some of the highest.
Yep.
In fact, the highest.
Yep.
And the fee rate is commensurate with that sort of the quality of that building and the location and the demographic of the area, where you have fairly well-to-do people who are making fairly good salaries, and they can, they're prepared to pay for quality. There's programs that you can buy, computer programs that allow you to access ABS statistics. You'd know them, I'm sure.
Yep.
I think looking at your IM, I think some of that stuff's come up from them.
Yep.
And you can judge how many 0 to 5-year-olds in the area, how many licensed places are in the area. These days, there's a lot of development activity. So you need to be aware that, is somebody else building the center just up the road? And who are they? And can we compete with them? And, will they be there first? Those sort of things, like any business, I suppose.
Yep.
Assessing the competitive environment. But if demographically, if you go into an area and it says, there's so many 0 to 5-year-olds and there's so many places, you want to have more children than places.
Yep.
Obviously. So that equals demand. Yeah. And if you go in and it says, and it doesn't, if that demand's not there, and unless there's really bad old infrastructure around there, it's probably not worth doing.
Yep. And you touched on it, and it's something that we can answer with a bit of confidence given the daily fee rates, but a lot of groups are going to kind of raise this question, investors that will look to buy this center, and for good reason. But the rental amount, like what's your view on the lease, the rate per place, and how do you determine that to be a feasible structure for this center in particular? We know, and you might have the same view or a different view, but there's a percentage of gross income that works like your daily fee rates that an operator will assign to rent. Some people don't look at that, but when you run the numbers on,
we look at that
daily fee rates, it makes sense, the rent now. But what's your view on that, the lease structure for Doncaster, and how it works for you?
Well, the rent at Doncaster traditionally, I'm not a young man, and I've been in this game a long time.
Yeah.
And, for me, I have numbers in my head about what a rent should be or what it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But these days, particularly since the COVID crisis, and the building industry is so difficult to get things done, the rent number per place has gone up significantly across the board.
Yep.
However, fees have gone up too. And as far as like a percentage, like we like it to be 15, somewhere around there. In a place like Doncaster, one of the advantages is that building is built to our spec. So we know every inch of it. Our people know every inch of it. We believe in really maintaining things. We don't want things getting old. We don't want things looking tired. And we spend a lot of money and effort and time keeping centers looking good. And so if we can get a brand new one that's built to the way we want it, we see value in that. Even there's a premium value in that for us,
Yep.
To pay a little bit more rent because we know we're getting a building that we want and a building that we can keep looking good.
And that's something that we talk about, and you're probably saying it based on what you've said to Pete, like investors all the time, is that outside the cost of construction and increases is well documented. Everyone knows what's going on.
Yeah.
But as a result of that, the number of developers who can deliver successfully quality childcare centres has plummeted massively.
Yes.
On the leasing front, we've seen the volume, in 21, which was substantial. 22 was still a strong year, but it started stepping down. And you look at this year, but the forecast for next year, it's falling off a cliff in terms of supply. So we're finding operators, and this, it sounds like is your view too. You need to, if it's the right building and it's a little bit overs, you need to do what's required to build scale and secure it, because there's not many coming up at all because of the build costs.
Yes. And we particularly are not in the business of buying an old one and making it better.
Yep.
Now we've done that a few times.
Yeah.
But it's not really our business model. Our business model is build a new one like we want it, keep it schmick, keep it perfect, and fill it up with children and families.
And you mentioned, Bill, that like 15% of the gross revenue is the number that you like. Do you base that off? Because every operator has a different, not everyone, it's generally close, but runs off different. Some are 65, some assume 75, some assume 85%, some assume 90% occupancy. Yep. What's your 15% based on as a forecast occupancy generally?
85.
Yep.
And in a place like Doncaster, in my experience, it's 158 places.
Yep.
It's big. It's not that. I mean, we have another center that's 151, which really is full. It's full.
Yep.
It's up here in Brisbane. And 150, like developers always want to build a big center, right? And operators always want to say, oh, no, let's make it a bit smaller. So there's that tension. And it was the same at Doncaster, right? Like, we had to meet in the middle, right? And say, well, this is as high as we can go as far as spaces go. Because it's like that center has been open since April.
Yep.
And it's already half full.
Yeah.
Which when you think about it, like if it was a 88 place center, it would be full.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just, and it would be full in.
Good point. It's a good point.
4 months.
Yeah, 4 months. And they usually allow, what do you usually allow for a 100 place center? 12 months to 18 months to get to, or 16 months to get to maximum occupancy, right?
If it's not there by 18 months, you really have to go in and diagnose what's going wrong.
Yeah.
And it could be, I mean, it's happened. I mean, I think people who say, oh no, we fill them up. Okay. Yeah. We've had some like this one. If this was an 88 place center, it would be full in 5 months.
Yeah.
We've had other 88 place centers, particularly in country towns, that fill in 3 months. But we've had a handful, 2 or 3, who, you get out to 18 months and they're still straggling around 60%. 60%'s no man's land. You want to be 50 or 70.
Yep.
Because at 50, you can cut staff costs. At 60, you're carrying 70's worth of staff, because you have to.
Yeah.
So it's, you want to make sure that you can get it to 75, where at 75, things work.
Yep.
Yeah.
And to conclude the interview now, I suppose in a nutshell, and I think it probably comes through quite obviously in terms of like market knowledge in this discussion, but for Imagine versus, obviously there's a number of childcare operators in the space. It's highly fragmented. What sets the brand apart and your success and your growth apart, do you think, from the competition that's out there?
Well, I think it's a couple things. I think we have an education mindset in that the owners are educators, right? And that, I think that helps. But also, it's also about the fabric of the buildings. I think the fabric of the buildings mean a lot. And like the change I've noticed, say since 2004, the first center we built in 2004, who, it had air conditioning. It was like, woo, everybody thought that was great, right?
Yeah.
But the parent expectation now is way higher. The parent expectation is that you're going to have a kitchen, you're going to feed them, you're going to give them nappies, you're going to do everything for them, which is a big change. And while everybody has to do that stuff, I think we're not shy about making sure that it's excellent and spending the money that's necessary to make it excellent. And you look like a place like Doncaster.
Yeah.
You're not going to have a parent walk in there and give them a Vegemite sandwich.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the level's up there, right? And the building tells the story. And keeping buildings looking good and keeping playgrounds fresh is a big part of our strategy. But of course, at the end of the day, it's a people business. So you have to also really empower staff, train staff, give staff a career pathway, pay them appropriately. And nowadays, that's a big issue in the industry. Well, I think it's in every industry, right? That getting the right people in the right place. Yeah. And I think we do that pretty good.